Once I've figured out, like, this is how I do that task, I've done it 700 times, I've filled in all the data. Now I've created a really nice roadmap to say, hey, this is a task I do a lot. Here's the roadmap that I've developed over the last 7 years of how to do it. The next 3, let's work together. And then all of a sudden I'm able to delegate easily because I've developed like my own internal efficiencies to be able to start handing those things off and working on other things. Every single individual has a story to tell, and they're great stories that need to be heard.
I want every listener to know they have the ability to change the world.
Welcome to the 1720 Podcast.
What's up, Mountain Movers? Welcome back to the 1720 Podcast. You have 3 in a row with us, which I think is a record, and we have a mixed bag of people that are like, man, I love when y'all just spitball ideas back and forth, and then the other half, we'll call it, is the silent half that's like, please, God, get a guest ready.
Well, thankfully, the silent half doesn't say anything. So when it's just us, all we hear is great things.
But I thought no news was good news in construction. I don't think that's the same for podcasting, is it?
Oh, probably not. But we have had, I mean, I feel like we say this more often than not, but a couple pings. Hey, that was great. Someone said, and I think it might have been D-Brad, said that was your best episode ever. Was that to you or to me? Somebody said that. Was it D-Brad?
Yeah, there's been, I get it mixed up between this and the daily motivations, which some weeks are intertwined with each other, but
yeah.
Gut Punch City. It's been a lot of gut punches for people and reflection. And we're recording this on the last day of Q1. It's a Friday. What perfect day to reflect on where you won and lost and what you want to do and have the weekend to reflect and go into the next week. And it's just catching it. What you see themes in here, it catches a lot of people at the same time because we're all going through similar things and at similar times. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, right.
So when it hits with one, it usually hits with many. It's just, we don't know that until we collect those data points of feedback.
Yeah. Now that I am in the industry more than an ancillary to the industry, like I've probably said this before, I get all sorts of feedback more so than I used to. And I was just walking from here over to the other side. I'm pointing, but I forget nobody sees me, over to the other side of the office. And I walk by and a guy on the other side of the office goes, Daily Dad, huh? That's a great new find. And I just like looked over my shoulder and I was like, yeah, that is a great find. Anyway, just like little touch points here and there. Here's a fun fact about our last episode that you don't know. Kevin, you ready for this?
Hit it.
So I let internet AI read the transcript of the podcast and write the summary that got posted. I didn't do it this time.
Fun fact on top of fun fact, I changed some of it because I was like, that's off. And I didn't know that you didn't write it.
I didn't write it. Yeah.
So I didn't
know you changed it. Yeah.
Go side by side Buzzsprout and what the LinkedIn post says.
Okay. So you changed it when you posted it on LinkedIn?
Yep.
That's funny. Yeah. So there was a lot of buzz last week about how ChatGPT was taking off and all this stuff, and then all these other ancillary softwares that are like connecting into those neural engines. And I was like, I'm going to try it. So I just ran the episode through the AI engine. I typed into it, like, write a summary of this episode. It wrote one. I was like, no, make it shorter. No, make it more casual. Until finally I was like, that's good. Copy, paste. So I got
make it Australian. Can you do that for next week?
Yeah, I'll try anything next week.
But I might.
You talking about the transcript itself? Like, see if it'll just like re-record it in Australian. I don't know. Right. Maybe we can do that. But yeah,
another fun-filled fact. I'm actually not here. This is my AI bot that you're talking to this week.
Man, I got to talking with William in the car the other day about this AI stuff, and he is, like all generations, infinitely smarter around tech than I am. And he got to talking about the like deep fakes and how they're like apps to change all this stuff. And it's just normalized to him. He just knows that you kind of have to, with a judging eye, wonder if what you're seeing on the internet is real.
Yeah.
And I'll give a shout out to a buddy of mine, Nick Brooks, who a long time ago was this is probably a decade ago, sitting in my office, and we were talking about how there's a future of the news cycle where you won't know if it's real or not. And I was like, I could see how maybe audio or what, and now you see these like deep fake videos that are really good, and you think, I don't know what's real and what's not. So shout out to Nick for predicting the future. But in any event, that's a super weird deep dive into AI on accident, just because I let it check the podcast out last week.
I like it. We'll see how it does next week.
Yeah, see if it'll do it better, and you won't have to tweak it. It's going to change all these words out, so it takes out all the negative undertones about AI that we're saying right now, because it's the machine. All right, we have a few things on topic on the preppy sheet.
Yeah, the first is for that silent half. You'll be relieved to know that we have some all-stars coming up the next couple weeks. So Brad Blankenship, we talked about him coming on. We reflect back a lot on our careers, but he gets to look back on an entire body of work, being recently retired. So we just shot him the prep sheet this week. He's excited. We're excited. It's going to be freaking awesome. And then Colby Campbell with Slate's Harwell, she's coming on the following week. She's been a friend for a while. She's an awesome leader, awesome human being. She's got a powerful testimony that she's going to share, and several other people to tee up as well. So we could have a hot streak now of guests coming on. We'll try to pepper in some one-on-ones here and there, but it looks like all of April's spoken for.
Yeah, Colby has long since been an attorney on the other side of cases that I always enjoyed working with, just because the camaraderie of the profession was friendly. So it'll be exciting to have her story, get her testimony sort of out, and kind of what she's up to these days. I did notice on LinkedIn today, so I guess 3 or 4 or 5 days ago, that she was promoted to equity partner at her firm, and that's a big deal. So shout out to Colby there too. Looking forward to hearing all that story when we get her on next couple weeks.
So I think I found out the day that happened because I was with John Slates and we were eating dinner, and he mentioned it, and so I was able to text her that day like, "Let's go."
Yeah, it's really there's not many, I use my air quotes here, promotions that lawyers get, but becoming partner is one of them, and then taking that step from sort of regular partner, if you will, I don't know what they call it, but to the equity stack is it's pretty fun. It's exciting. So shout out to her. And I don't know if you know Aaron Capps. The both of them were promoted to equity this week. So shout out to both of those guys.
I know of the name, but I think probably from you.
Yeah. Great. He used to be a partner of mine at a different law firm and a great friend of mine. So congratulations to both those guys. Okay, so we were talking sort of prepping before we got going here about a few topics you've been wrestling with and through, and talking out and on through some of your stuff you're working on with some of your clients right now. And so I'm going to let you tee them up, and then we'll just talk through them however and wherever it takes us. So pick one on the list and off we go.
Yeah, the first one is efficiency and effectiveness. Like, I don't want to say versus, because they're kind of, it's both. I think it's an and statement. And thinking about the difference between the two, I think of effectiveness is execution, right? Like properly doing the job.
The thing got done correctly.
The thing got done correctly, right? So like effectiveness equals execution. Efficiency is, okay, that used to take me 12 hours to be effective. Now it takes me 8 hours to be effective. And you dwindle that down. And some cool conversations have come about where everybody's struggling with time. Everybody's busy. Like, catch somebody in this industry that says, I'm not busy, like almost impossible. And so how do you become efficient over time? And because you can't be gifted efficiency. Like, you could be gifted training and mentorship and support and videos that can help you become efficient. But I think there's a misconception out there where people want to have that 6-hour workday, 4 days a week. And if you're starting in an industry, you have to be effective before you could be efficient. And you might never be efficient. That's why you see people late into their career burning the midnight oil, because they have tasks to do, but they just haven't figured out how to be efficient. And so I see that struggle with, like new age technology and people able to do that work from home and all this technology. But you have to be able to put in that time and effort in order to achieve efficiency. And I think when you think about your time 10 years ago versus today, and because I reflect on mine, like, it's always one of those hold my beer moments when you think like, how busy am I today versus 5 years ago, 10 years ago? And it's always one of those laughable moments because you're so much busier than you were then, but you're more capable. And you're more capable because you're putting these tools in your tool belt and you're becoming more efficient.
Yeah, there's a lot to that. I'm going to talk about the efficiency or the effectiveness component first, but then I want to I have a lot of questions about efficiencies. But yes, I was having that conversation the other day in the context of someone asking the question, why are attorneys so expensive? Like, why is that hourly rate so much? And the conversation I was having was related to both efficiency and effectiveness, but at the time wasn't thinking about it in that box. It was, and the answer was because it took me today only 15 minutes to deliver to you 20 years of experience where I learned how to do it well, how to do it quickly, and then you got the benefit of both of those colliding at the same time, and it manifests itself economically in the rate being higher, right? But that's that the law firm model is kind of wonky in that regard because there's not effectiveness shows up in your rate, but it doesn't necessarily show up in like the widget building. I've talked about building widgets before. So like I have delivered that service to you, client, more quickly, and you've received the benefit of my effectiveness and efficiencies, but I still am expected to build the same number of widgets, right? So whereas the kind of the point you're making is people are expecting because of technology to deliver to them like a 6-hour day. Well, that doesn't really work when your comp model, when your business model is based on billing hours, right? And so there's this weird confluence of efficiency and effectiveness that kind of is speaks to me in a sort of different way because of my law firm background.
Yeah.
But not to say two other things around that. One is like, but I didn't become effective on a whim. I became effective by saying, I don't really understand this. I'm going to get as deep as I can on it.
Yeah.
And now I can say, because I spent like literally years working, like sharpening those tools. Now someone comes in my office and says, what do we do about this? I say, well, chapter 53 of the property code says X. And if you flip over to section 156, it talks about Y. And so the answer is click, and it's over. Because I spent so much time so deep on those issues that now I do have some naturalized efficiencies because of them.
Yeah. And like both of us, I know we're hustlers, right? And we want things to be done right. And effectiveness, like think about 2 lines on a line graph. Like day 1, like I'm gunning for effectiveness, but there's going to be mistakes, there's going to be failures, there's going to be tough lessons learned, but I'm going to put in everything I got to be effective. And so that line is on a lower slope than the efficiency. The efficiency is taking off because it's starting at 0. It's taking me forever to do a task. And then over time, not only is my effectiveness increasing, but my efficiency is skyrocketing because I continue to put in the same amount of effort over and over. Think about the season that I'm in right now. If I show up for a leadership workshop and there's a presentation and I'm doing public speaking, I am coming prepared. I have turned down opportunities that are back-to-back days because I am not efficient enough at this point to give both of those my all, and I am only expecting my all. That's an obligation that I have to every single client. So I'd rather say no to you and give 100% of what I have into this one thing until I could become more efficient.
Yeah.
And that's why over time, like people, like my 40 hours look different than the next person's. And people are like, well, how are you involved in multiple companies, podcasts, youth ministry, family time, and all that? It's like work. Reps every day. I've also extended my day to start at 4 a.m. when you choose to sleep in. Like I'm gaining hours in the day and I am not wasting them. And we're going to get to that in a minute about like, what does that first 10 look like? But that's what the difference between efficiency and effectiveness, but you should be chasing both in your life.
Yeah. Yeah. There is a false promise of technology too. And I don't know exactly how deep I get on this off the top of my head, but man, your Slack channel should make it more. Make a spreadsheet for like all these just ideas that are hitting at once seem to like deliver a false promise that it's going to make it easier. And sometimes that's true, but more often than not, I feel like sometimes those are creating busy work. Like, okay, now I have to go in there and check a box. Whereas we haven't spent a long amount of time, not we in particular, like we culturally haven't spent a long time thinking through, is this actually going to derive efficiency? What's the goal? Why are we checking the box? What is the box checked going to produce? How are we going to use that, what it is producing to get, like, we're not thinking through it. We're just like, oh, this tool, we have to use a tool. We have to use a tool. No, like it's not always the right way to do it. And so the question I was going to kick back to you is like, what sort of methods or modalities have you used or working on to begin deriving efficiencies? Like, what is it? I mean, I understand that it's reps and hustle, right? But is there something else around that? You're like, if people were trying to think through how to do it, they're like, you need to check out this or try this or execute this strategy or think through why or whatever. Thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I kind of have a vague but real answer to that. Like when it comes to a method with whatever you're doing, just have a method. For example, to-do list. Mine's the yellow pad with the date at the top left, to-do list at the top. I write everything out, start with a clean piece of paper, just stare at it blankly, and the words come to life in my head, and I write them down. And then I prioritize them, and I asterisk what day of the week do they need to be done by. And when they're done, I highlight them. And that's old school. That's not for everyone. You're probably more techie. You got something electronic. It could be OneNote. It could be Post-its. It doesn't matter to me. Have a way to do it to become more efficient. The same with your calendar. I'm color coded, so I know that purple is 1720, yellow is personal, and it catches my brain when I'm looking at it visually, pre-deciding how days are going to look. And I know where I have to show up, and it makes me more proactive to be ready for what's next and avoids missing things. And to your point on technology earlier, like Slack, yeah, can be a powerful tool. So it can take that line on the line graph of efficiency up, or because all your boys are hanging out in there, it's a distraction, and you're hearing the like that sound that it has all the time when a message comes through. And all of a sudden, now you're just texting like you're on your phone. So you have to have that personal governor in your life to know, is this a distraction or is this making me more efficient? Pre-decisions. I mean, like, I'm going to tie pre-decisions into the first 10 as well. Like pre-deciding what your day is going to look like the day before or the morning of. Like, let's just start there, for example. For me personally, I look at my phone in the closet of our bedroom the night before to figure out what clothes, what outfit do I need to go hang up on the hook in front of the door for the next day, and what shoes do I need. Bust out my supplements and put them on the kitchen table the night before.
Right.
My lunch is prepared. My headphones are charged for the gym. My gym clothes are sitting on the dining room table. Like, I am pre-deciding that I'm going to be efficient in the next day because I don't know what tomorrow is going to bring. So if I can be as prepared as possible through this method, then chances are I'm going to be ready for whatever adversity hits because something's coming that I don't know about. So why not control the things that I can before that hits?
Man, there's a great, I don't know if I could find it to link it, but I read a great article on Steve Jobs once about how he was doing all that. He was sort of normalizing routine activities to take the decisions out of it. And I think for him, correct me if I'm wrong, a listener will be like, nah, bro, that's not right. But I think he wore like black pants and a black, like, was it a black mock turtleneck? Like every day, like he just wore the same thing every day. So he didn't have to make those decisions, and just sort of normalizing, you know, these are the things I just regularly do, and start to create some efficiencies and start to create some time margin by doing that also. The only thing I would add to it is, well, it's the same actually idea. It's like normalizing the things you do. And I would be remiss to say that I'm a form lawyer because that has a real negative connotation, but there are tasks that I do repetitively that I can say, okay, well, this is my starting point for that task. I'm not reinventing the wheel every time. If I need to do that task, I have a document or a OneNote or something that sets out, like, for this task, here are the 3 or 4 things you need to be thinking about, and here's how you execute the task. And then every time I think of something new, I'm like constantly process improving the way to do that task. And the reason I think that's important is twofold. One is because it starts to take away, like, what am I going to wear? Right. I'm going to wear black. It takes away, like, oh, I need to do that thing. Click. I've already done it 600 times. This is the way I figured out how to best do it. And I can run through that SOP and execute that task very efficiently. And it sort of falls into and this maybe gets us to time management. It falls into this, the 4Ds of time management. If you ever, so the gist that you probably have, actually, but maybe not framed like that. The gist of it is you either do it, you defer it, you delegate it, or you delete it or drop it. Yeah. So this like doing it like that, like trying to derive your own operational efficiency, helps you on the third point where you can delegate it. Because once I've figured out, like, this is how I do that task, I've done it 700 times, I've filled in all the data. Now I've created a really nice roadmap to say, hey, this is a task I do a lot. Here's the roadmap that I've developed over the last 7 years of how to do it. The next 3, let's work together. And then all of a sudden I'm able to delegate easily because I've developed like my own internal efficiencies to be able to start handing those things off and working on other things. And so, not that that's helpful, but it is at least an idea for those who are trying to think like, okay, I've become a subject matter expertise on X, and now I need to get better at it. How do I do it? Well, that's an idea. See if that works for you. It has worked for me. See if it works for you.
And we're going to get into it later. What I love as I continue to dive deeper into studies like this isn't just our opinion. It used to be my opinion because I was ignorant to the fact that there's scientific fact that backs some of these things up that we're talking about. So like science is into play with some of this neurologically, that when you do these things, it's going to set you up for success. And if you have lofty goals and aspirations, you need to be setting up habits like this in order to get there. This is where the magic happens in your daily grind to become more efficient. If you have like, I want to run 3 businesses, like what, I don't know, I'm just throwing something out there, but today you're not even running one of them. Well, you got a lot of work to go. You have to work every single day to become that person that can do that. And because that person that you look up to, like, how are they running all those businesses? They got a lot of experience to get them to that point.
Yeah. I have found more often than not, when I start to put together like these theories I have, or some like idea that I think that if X, then Y, and there's a correlation between those that has a resultant Z or whatever, then I'll be like, oh, I'll see if I can get on the Google later and start clicking around, and I will find like, oh, there's actually a Harvard Business Review article on this. There's some guy in England who's done a 30-year study. And I would say more often than not because I'm smart, but just because it's, even a dumb luck. What's a blind squirrel will find a nut every once in a while. You will do exactly what you said. You're like, oh, well, this guy in England who studied that behavioral model for 30 years says this exact thing. And it gets us to 2 points, and then kind of back to one of yours, which is, if I would have just been smart enough to have started reading 30 years ago, I wouldn't have had to have I wouldn't have wrestled through and tried to assemble all this stuff together. I would just read it 30 years ago. I'm like, oh, that makes sense. Plug that into my brain, keep going. And so if I had a do over, and we make fun of myself, we make fun of me a lot about not really being a reader. And I'm trying more and more to read, but man, that would have been a superpower for 20-year-old me, to just start thinking forward and reading and looking through these management and leadership theories and all of those things. Because I would have been, a decade ahead theoretically if I'd have done that. So, but to your point, and my dovetail back to you is I think I said earlier, I've missed 2 DMs this week, and I think one of them was related to like science backing up stuff, right? Wasn't that one?
Oh yeah, and we're going to get there in a minute about dopamine specifically, and I'm learning so much that is scientific fact that I just equated to logic. Like, well, if I have an addictive personality, if I aim that to good, chances are it's going to work out. But there's science behind that, and it's not just having an addictive personality. It's basically chasing dopamine hits, and there's natural things in your life that you can do. But before we go there, I want to also hit it, like, pre-decisions aren't just on time. They're on your mindset. Your mindset's so powerful. Like, and I'll give you an example for me that every Saturday morning I'm running a 10K, right? And I joke about it where that's the only time Chicago Kevin comes out, because if somebody tries to hit me or is not paying attention, I snap off at the side of that person's window screaming at them because they're not paying attention. And I can just accept that, or before I go off for the run, I could pre-decide if somebody cuts me off, I'm going to wave and smile at them.
Yeah.
And when I tried that on for size, when I did that, I waved, and then it was immediately off my shoulders. I wasn't for the next mile, fantasizing about choking them. I was released from it. And so you can make a pre-decision on what is my attitude going to look like today? What effort am I going to put in? And that's not a one and done. Maybe the effort you have to revisit hourly.
Yeah.
What perspective do you need to have on life right now? Yeah, you're in a battle, but what good do you have? And so making these pre-decisions are gonna set up your days in a whole different level. And the challenge that I'll put out to each person is just journal out, what does your first 10 look like? The first 10 things that you're doing in your day. So your alarm goes off, boom, right from the very beginning, what are the first 10? Maybe for you, and I'm talking about you as the listener, 1, 2, and 3 are hitting the snooze button. All right.
Yeah.
That's an area to address. Are you really sleeping that good? Is that helping your day? But write out your first 10. If your first 10 are so automatic, crank it up to the first 20. And I'm not looking for the big things either. Be real with the small stuff. I brushed my teeth. I let the dogs out in the backyard. I gave them food, supplements, whatever. I shaved. I drove to the gym. Lay out those steps and see if there's room for improvement there. And if you don't have steps, what a great starting point to become more efficient. It's kind of like when you go on a weight loss journey at first and you initially cut out those first few pounds because you're doing something new. The same thing will happen with those first 10, first 20, wherever you get to in this voyage of creating or buying back more time in your life.
We do that with our kids, ironically. And I've not, they have a checklist before they can go to school, on the way out the door. It's I think it's silly things like, do you have on shoes? Not really. But brush your teeth. If you brush your teeth, put on deodorant, did you pack your lunch? Just those sort of checklist things. And it helps them level set to make sure they're not getting out of the door having forgotten something. Kind of goes back to the thing we were talking about earlier about creating efficiencies, right? If here's the first 10 things I do every morning, you don't have that moment where you're standing in the bathroom, half asleep, trying to remember if you brushed your teeth or not.
That's
or
right.
Whatever. No, I know I brush my teeth because right now I'm putting in my contacts, and I always brush my teeth before I put on my contacts, and that's just how I do it. That's how I know, and then you just and off you go.
Because my first 20 is automatic, so my brain gets to focus in strategy land and other things. And now you're wondering that earlier point, how do you run multiple things at the same time? Because I've made so much of my life automatic that my brain gets to focus elsewhere, while you might be drudging through the first 10 steps of your life. Those are automatic. The first 20 are automatic. And where I'm going, which we're going to next, is to dopamine land then, which I hadn't had figured out. And man, if you want to listen to a data-driven scientific podcast, the Huberman Lab, Dr. Andrew Huberman, he's a Stanford biologist teacher. He knows so much about neurology, biology, the study of the mind, the study of different chemicals and how they're released in your head. And so many light bulbs went off after I did a deep dive and listening to several podcasts, but specifically on dopamine. It's the neurotransmitters your body uses to send messages. And there's 3 different types. You have peaks in dopamine. So when it spikes up, something good happens. The troughs. So what comes up must go down. Right. And so those neurological levels, those transmitters come down through troughs. And then there's baselines. And dopamine plays a role in feeling pleasure, the ability to think and plan. It helps us strive, focus, find things interesting. It's like your positivity transmitter in your life. And so, go ahead. You're about to talk.
No, I don't. This is a DM I missed. So while you were talking, I just was looking up Huberman. So I was going to bolster his credibility with instead of I think he is, by saying this is what he did, right? And so I looked it up. It says he's an American neuroscientist, a tenured professor in the Department of Neurobiology and Psychiatry and Behavioral Sciences at Stanford, who has made contributions in the brain development, plasticity, neural regeneration, and repair fields. His work is focused on visual systems, including mechanics of light-mediated activation, blah, 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 blah. He's done a little work in this area.
A little, yes.
Yeah.
And he talks, man, there was so many nuggets in the several episodes I started diving into, where you have action, right? Different actions that you do creates dopamine. I think most of us can pick up on that. And
Yeah.
so like when he was talking about peaks and troughs, he's talking about like drug use, right? So a line of cocaine, your dopamine spikes, but it spikes in that water. He does an analogy of like a wave pool. And when it spikes, that water spills out. So when the trough happens, that's when somebody starts having that craving and that addiction kick up, and their baseline level of that dopamine lowers, and it lowers.
Mm-hmm.
And so rather than the peaks and the troughs, he gives examples of just how to naturally raise your baseline. And guess what one of his biggest raises of baseline was?
I'm guessing it's physical exercise, but I don't really know.
Ice bath. So these cold plunges that I've been doing naturally raise your level for like 4 hours. So, and I just was doing it like I want to do a hard thing.
Because
like,
you're a masochist. That's why you're doing it. Yeah.
Well, because hard things bring me joy. And now I know why they bring me joy, because it naturally releases. I'm not a psychopath. Hooray. Like it raises your dopamine levels in your life to bring joy. Like,
okay, so I am listening to you talk about this and researching it after you've already done it, right? But when you're talking about this, I start thinking about other things. And I Googled dopamine anger because I was thinking like, if what you're saying is right, then you get these little bursts. And then why do people, I was actually thinking about it in the context of the guy bumping into you while you're running, right? Like you derive some pleasure from being frustrated at that person. And there's just a bevy of articles on how anger is an addiction because you start to get a dopamine rush whenever you get mad about something.
Yeah.
And so you become literally addicted to anger, just like with gambling, extreme sports, or cocaine.
This is why it ties back to the previous point of predecisions of your mind.
Right.
Because your mindset releases dopamine. So if you fantasize about doing something stupid, you get a rise from it that then creates a trough and a craving to go chase it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how many times we got to talk about the importance of your mindset. Now we're going scientific on it.
Yeah.
Control your mindset to control your actions. And if you start putting your mindset towards, I am going to kick butt in this meeting today. I am enough. I am going to do great. And like these are self-affirmations. This isn't you in a video that you're posting publicly to come off as some cocky jerk. This is like to get you mentally keyed and squared away to take on the day. Like I'm going to go crush. But how often do we walk around, maybe not around others because we put this happy face on, but by ourselves, we're like, I can't, this is going to stink. I don't want to go here. This is going to be brutal. And then we got to like
sit through this meeting before. I don't do it again.
Yeah. Why not reverse that? And you get anticipatory dopamine released in your life, and then you go crush, which raises your baseline, which I think is tremendously impactful if we harness it. It's within us. It's free. It's free. We just have to tap into it.
We need to drop some of these Huberman Lab links into the show. I guess the right thing to do these days is to drop it in the comments on LinkedIn or something like that. Maybe I can put it in the show notes or something like that. I'm not tech savvy enough to know what to do, but we should link to some of these so people can head straight to it. I'm sure you got a podcast somewhere too. We can find some of that stuff and click it out there. It's
awesome. I mean, even dopamine, like taking in, like facing the natural sun in the east and how it impacts you like 2 days later, dude. It's fascinating. It's fascinating.
Yeah, yep. It looks like he flipped all of his YouTube stuff into a podcast. And so the one that you're talking about, leveraging dopamine, is on Spotify. There's a 2-hour long talk on it, so we can cross link that for sure. Yeah, that's amazing.
And so one that was making me laugh out loud. So we have dopamine and mindset, dopamine and action, and then dopamine as it relates to procrastination. Mm-hmm. And I thought this was fascinating. So like, what's my kryptonite? Ironic for you, it's boilerplate contracts. That's one. So let's say I'm sitting here and I'm officing out of home right now. I have a boilerplate contract sitting on this desk. I know I have to do it, but I don't want to do it. So instead, I'll go do clean the house. I'll go vacuum or something. So I'm willing to do something I usually don't want to do in the place of the thing I really don't want to do.
Yeah, right.
And the way he says to knock that out. So if I have this boilerplate contract, this thing I've been procrastinating on, go find something that sucks even worse than that. So maybe I go jump in that horse trough in my backyard because then I've just kind of faked my mind out that like I've already done a harder thing. So now this contract's actually a breeze, and it resets your mind rather than lingering on the thing you don't want to do, and offsets your procrastination.
That is a bananas theory, but I get it, right? Like I get it. I feel like so much of like, what I was going to say is going to kind of sound silly, but like being able to like perform at a higher level, let me say it like that, involves like tricking your mind out of its natural tendencies.
Yes.
Like
until they become your natural tendencies and you become a weapon.
But the thing is, you can't trick yourself out of your natural tendencies if you don't spend time figuring out what your natural tendencies are. Like you just sit in the rut unless you analyze the rut and then assess how to get out of it. Right. So maybe procrastination is not your thing. It kind of is for me. Sometimes, but whatever the rut is, you can't get out of it until you write it down, so to speak. So you analyze it, write it down, figure it out, then you get out of it. Yeah. And the procrastination, like doing a worse thing than a boilerplate contract so that you're excited to come back to it, air quotes. That's an interesting theory. That is an interesting theory. That's probably more, it's not a theory. It's not a theory. That's interesting science, I should say.
It is. Like, think about your to-do list. And you, instead of eating the frog, as they say, you take on the smaller tasks on it because they're easy, chalk up wins, and you just keep procrastinating on the one you actually should be doing over and over and over. It's like if you stop right there and see what you're doing, being self-aware, and then if you absolutely won't take that big task on, do something even worse, identify something even worse than that big task. Mm-hmm. And even the thought of it might cause you to go do what's right.
Right, because if the mindset piece is actually connected, thinking about doing the terrible thing creates the scenario of actually doing the terrible thing, which then gives you the mathematical delta to doing the less terrible thing is better.
Yes.
That's the worst sentence I've ever put together in my whole life. I'm going to have AI fix that one. That one was
Who was on second and what was on third? And then
yeah, that was terrible. Man, that's good stuff in there today. Oftentimes, much to the chagrin of the silent listeners, oftentimes we get to talking about something and I'm like, man, that's a great idea. Not because I had it, but just because between us talking about it, it gets me into a spot where I'm like, yeah, that's convicting. That's a great idea. I should work on that. And, I start thinking about, I need to share this with somebody. I need to tell so-and-so. I could see how we could implement this at the office, all that sort of stuff. So as much as we have listeners listening to the things we're talking about, just being your homie and chatting through stuff, like this is super helpful, man, for me personally. So
yeah, and we finally didn't bounce around from ADD land because this is, as you say, a story arc of in order to become more efficient, you pre-decide how your days are going to go through time management, write out your first 10, all in the chase of this dopamine that'll increase the positivity in your life. Bye-bye.
Yeah. Hey, we actually told our own story. Yeah. How about that? You know what would have been better than what we just did, though?
Ditching the entire time, just driving into a ravine in and out, left to right.
If I had hit record 30 minutes ago.
That would have stunk. Yeah, there just won't be a podcast next week.
Because I forgot to hit record. How funny would that be? Actually, terrible. It wouldn't be funny at all.
130 in, I'm sure we've done that at least once. We had a squadcast or two disappear.
We had a squadcast disappear for sure. Shout out to squadcast because they fixed a bunch of the bugs that I think we were the test crew through. It's been working out really well lately. But yeah, we definitely had some like, this did not work. What in the world?
Yeah.
If you haven't, we come back to it from time to time. Our biggest faux pas, I think, was with Bennett though. Like just
no audio.
Just terrible. It's like we were recording in a restroom at a truck stop. It was terrible.
Yeah.
But anyhow, cool, man. This was awesome. This is great for me. And we did it in 40 minutes. Pretty good number. Remember when we started? Here's a funny refrain. When we were sitting in my garage back in COVID times talking about doing these episodes, we were thinking they were going to be like 15, 20-minute quick hits. I've never have we ever done one like that. They're always longer.
Oh, dude, that's what. So, have you done Jake's yet?
No. I think Jake and I are recording next week. Sorry, Jake. It's coming up soon, though. I know.
Be prepared. 30 minutes is the cutoff, dude. So, like, we just started talking about purpose, and then he hit me with a closing question. I'm like, bro, we didn't go anywhere, man.
Yeah.
It's like, because we're so programmed on this habitually to talk a little longer and hit a lot of points. It's just different. So get ready for that blitz change of pace.
Man, speaking of Jake, he hit me with a left cross this week on LinkedIn. It said, it's the, what do you call it? It's like the image with the words on it, whatever you call it. I'm sure there's a designer name for that, but
a meme?
No, I think it's Mimi. Emmy.
Yeah, just like you say, GIF and Mimi.
Yes. It's a quit wishing for what you won't work hard for. Quit wishing for what you won't work hard for. Yeah. And not that was like directed at me, but it was just the gut punch of like, oh yeah, like you don't get to sit around and just hope for it. Like get to work. And I took that and screenshot it and sent it out to a bunch of people and sent it to Jake and said, thanks for the gut punch. And so shout out to Jake.
For sure, man. I got to talk about that through efficiency with the Andrus team. So we spun up this leadership program with Andrus and the up and comers and longstanding people there. It's a great group, and they were assigned several podcasts to listen to, leaning into the sessions.
Yeah.
And so they asked questions around that, like how did you get started, and what did it look like? And it was a cool story arc again to tell through efficiency. Like, it was terrible and I was terrible and we didn't know what we were doing. It was very robotic, and you just
you assigned them episodes of our podcast.
I would never do that. Okay. Somebody else did that to them.
Okay. Okay. Because that makes more sense.
Hey, get ready for this. Here are some 1720 episodes to prepare you for this journey.
Which ones were they?
They mentioned Shane Tollison.
Amazing. Great.
They mentioned a goal one. So like I was midway through the goal section of my session. They're like, this sounds just like your episode. I'm like,
This sounds like 127.
Well, at least you know it's authentic because this is what we're doing.
Yeah, right.
They're a fun group. They're great people. And they set an anthem and a theme for the journey. And OBS is an acronym. So shout out to the OBS team if they're listening. They know what it stands for. And
you mean anthem like there's actually a song?
No, like a theme for the goal achieving journey. So it's taglined.
I got you.
Which they came up with.
That's cool. Yeah, that's cool. We've talked to the office a lot about, changing things and working on stuff and fixing processes. Not that there's anything wrong, just because we're constantly improving stuff. And I was sitting in my office brainstorming with somebody the other day, and I was like, you know what? We need to stop. We need to get all the stakeholders who will be involved with this in the room to do it together. Because that's going to be so much better. Mm-hmm. If everybody who's involved with the implementation of strategy is involved in the conversation to the same point of like, how are you going to develop a theme and impose it on people? Like, just get them in the room, ask them what they want. How are we going to do this? What does this look? Are you bought in on this? And then all of a sudden it's ours, not mine.
That's right.
And it's so much easier.
And fun. And part of the journey, and willing to buckle up for adversity.
Yeah.
I have a great story on that, but that'll be for another time. It's also a chapter in the book of how things like that can transform people, businesses, companies, cultures, dude. I've seen it firsthand.
Yeah. Pin it. We'll come to it another day.
Penny boy.
All right, man. I know we previewed it earlier, but back to the studio next week.
Yep, for the next several weeks. So it'll be awesome.
Signing off here. You guys have a great week and stay out there. Keep moving mountains.